pushed record on this, my husband called me. Like, oh, okay. I was just gearing up to say hi. Hi there, my name's Kirsten. This is the Paper Knits podcast, episode number 12. I am a knitter in Edmonton, Alberta, and I have lots of things to show you today. It's been a little while since I've podcasted, and I have finished a lot of things in the meantime. So, spoiler alert is that here's two of them. I've got another finished object, and then, yeah, just lots of things on the go. And yeah, I felt really excited about my knitting this last month. I definitely had a slow start to the year with my knitting, which I talked about in my last episode. And yeah, I feel re-energized again by my plans and what I've got on the needles and what's coming up ahead. So yeah, lots to share today. It has also been a hard month, and the yeah, which I'm not going to get all into, but yeah, it's meant that I had a lot of knitting time this month, and so that is why I've got a lot of projects done. So anyways, one other thing I wanted to mention before I just get going, because I forgot to mention it last time. In my December episode, I shared all the things that I had knit for my daughter Beth, and also I had posted a link to a fundraiser for Beth's birthday. And I wanted to raise $500 for the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Center, so Infant Loss Support Center, which is an organization in Calgary that provides support for families, I think Canada-wide, who have dealt with pregnancy and infant loss. And it's been a great support for us, and I've connected with people through it, and yeah. So I wanted to raise money for Beth's birthday for that organization. I'd set a goal of $500 and put it out there to my knitting world, and we raised $1,275. And so I want to say thank you so much for everybody who donated. About half of that was from my close family and friend circle kind of thing. But I didn't even spread it out there to my wider local circle. So yeah, it was my close friends and family, and then you guys, and I just am so grateful. It meant so much to me. People, the moment that my podcast went live, people were watching it and started donating, and I'm really grateful. That support has been there for me since episode 1 here, and I always say it, but it's it means so much to me. And yeah, just to see this support in this way too, of being able to support this organization, yeah, it feels really significant to me. So I just wanted to say a big thank you for that. And there, if you want to, I'll link that episode if you want to go. I also linked a couple resources there, because that's another thing that feels important to me, is just that there's more understanding and awareness about how to support people through pregnancy and infant loss. Yeah, there's just a good chance that everybody here knows somebody who's dealt with that in some way, if it's not been you yourself. And so there's a couple of resources linked in that episode. And I had also encouraged people that it's if you don't want to donate to that organization directly, or maybe you're in the States or in Australia or in a different country, to find something local to you and consider donating there as well. There is thankfully a lot of these support organizations, and also unfortunately there's a lot of need for them. So I just wanted to come back to that, because I'd forgotten to mention it in my last episode, and yeah, I'm really grateful, so thank you. Okay, we can do some knitting things now. I have 2 sweaters that I finished this month, and a very large blanket / wrap. It's not a large blanket, it's a small blanket, but a large wrap, so I'll show that. So first thing, this is my Do You Yoke sweater by Zanete Knits, although I also looked up how to actually pronounce it, and I think it's actually pronounced Zanete, but I'm not sure. This was a mystery knit along, which is, I think, my first one that I have done. I have definitely said before that mystery knit alongs are not my vibe because I am too controlling for that. But I really like this designer's vibe. They had said that it was going to be like geometric, like top-down colorwork yoke sweater. Pagan Sky is their like really famous one. They have a couple other. I haven't actually ever knit any of her patterns before, but really like the vibe of them. So they're often either this like geometric design or like a floral design, and so she said this one's gonna be geometric, and you kind of got a little snippet of the pattern like every week or two. I believe it was a collaboration between the designer and a yarn shop called Do You Knit, and the yarn that they used in the pattern was Moondrake Chibi and Spin Cycle Dyed in the Wool. And so the sample is like a pink main color and then this like really nice like Spin Cycle like colorwork design. And as I do, I looked up every single yarn that was a color changing yarn that could have ever existed that I could use for that, but ultimately decided to just like do solid colors. And yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out. It was really, they had like a Slack, I think it was on Slack or Discord or something, channel to like keep up with other people and just like posting projects and asking questions and whatever about it. And yeah, it was a cool experience to go through. And you got the so like the first chunk of it was like the first half of the yoke, and then probably the second half of the yoke, and then the rest of the body, and then the sleeves kind of thing. And so you pretty quickly could like see what the sweater was going to be. It wasn't like as mysterious as like a Stephen West shawl knit along, and I would totally do it again. So I really enjoyed the process of it, and I mostly kept up until the end. I didn't finish the body on time before the sleeves came out, and then I kind of petered out because I was working on other things and whatever, but I got it done now, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I knit mine with Durerum Natura Albertine, which is 90% merino and 10% silk. I'd never used it before. I bought it on Boxing Day sales from the Knitting Loft, and always a little bit nerve-wracking to like buy a sweater's quantity worth of yarn when you've like never even touched it before, but I am really happy with it. Like the pattern, it was specified for sport weight, but the gauge was 28 stitches, and I knew for me that was more like a fingering weight, and so that's what I ended up buying. These come in 50-gram balls, 200 meters per 50 grams. So, but it also feels like plump. It's like I haven't knit with. I do have another yarn that I've knit with that's merino silk, but I think it's a higher silk content, and so that changes how it feels. But it's very nice. Like it feels plump. It was like lovely for color work. There feels like there's almost like a weight to it, but it's not heavy. I don't know how to explain it. It feels really nice. It's like very comforting, and it was very nice to knit with. It's got kind of like a coolness to it, and I really enjoyed knitting with it. And I have worn this sweater a couple of times, and it's pilling, and so I'm sad about that. I'll see if I can show off a little bit on the arm. It's just like it's getting a bit fuzzy, and so I think that this is my like second and a half time wearing it kind of thing. And so we'll see how it continues to kind of wear, and if I just like, okay, maybe it's just gonna like do one good pill, like that happens with soft fibers. I can do a little lean on it and maybe we'll be good to go. I really hope so, because I would really like to use this yarn again, and I don't want it to look shabby immediately because it's starting to pill. So anyways, besides that, I'll keep you posted about how it is wearing, because I just enjoyed the knitting process of it so much. It was very interesting color work. One thing that was cool is that there's like barely a jog on the back of like where the beginning of round was. It uses Japanese short rows, which I'd never done before, and they were like super slick. I started this, when did I start this project? I didn't make note of it. In January. Well, yeah, I guess the pattern came out like January 7th or something. So, or maybe even earlier than that. I think I didn't get my yarn right away. So anyways, I cast it on in first week of January. Can't say I exactly remember. I could not tell you how to do Japanese short rows right now, because that was like the first part of the pattern, right, doing the short rows, but it was like super slick and I enjoyed it and I would use them again for sure. I added an extra row of short rows, like an extra set, because I often find that I need that. And so the pattern was very well written. It was very clear. It's like very well organized. One thing that was like especially awesome is because it was so much color work and they had the charts in for that, but they had the charts written for both a dark main color and a light main color. And so depending on which chart, depending on what your colors were, you could pick the chart. So I had one that used dark main color, and then the chart had light stitches then for the contrast color. Or if you were using, like the sample is more of like a lighter main color and then a darker contrast color. And so then you could use that chart, and it just like helps my brain a lot. I have another like languishing whip that is a very dark, like almost black, and a very light contrast color, but the chart is written in the inverse. And when it's like a very detailed color work pattern, my brain does not like that. And so I need to go and like redo the charts myself so that I put them in the right like color for me, which I do anyways if I'm like knitting a colorful color work chart, which I'll talk about with this one. I always go and make my own charts like in Pattern Genius. Is that the one I use? Anyways, I thought that was like a major perk for me about this pattern. I'm not sure if they do that for their other patterns as well, but I loved it, so that was great. You cast on for just like directly onto the yoke and then come back later and pick up the stitches for the neckband. I have not done that. I haven't done that very often, and I like kind of freaked out about how wide it looked, and so when I picked up my stitches for the neckband, I picked up fewer stitches. So I was like, I just needed to cinch in a bit more. Like I probably would have been fine. You can like see just like ever so slightly some puckering around the edge, but it's fine. I was like, if I really need to, I could go back and fix it. It's not annoying enough for me to go back and fix it, so it's fine. I'm actually really happy with how the yoke fits, and I got gauge for the pattern, which is like not common for me to like easily get gauge. And I really like how the color work goes down past the split for sleeves. Like that's my favorite like look for like a color work yoke. I did make one change to the bottom of the color work design here. In the pattern, there's kind of these other little like things that kind of curve, like go upwards here, and I just left those out. I'll stand up a little bit here. And so you'll see it as soon as you look at the other pictures, like there's this other part here that goes up, but I wanted to simplify that a little bit. So this here is a very long stretch then between motifs, and so I did ladder back jacquard, which mostly worked out super well. I'm like happy with how clean it looks, but you can definitely tell where the fabric changes from like this is stranded to this is now one strand of yarn. And when part of why I fell behind, I guess, on the knit along was because when I finished the color work and got to just knitting the body, I went down a needle size, because I always go up a needle size for my color work, so I went back down a needle size then to do the stockinette. But you could see such a difference in the gauge still between them. And the color work fabric was just so dense. And then the plain stockinette was like, just seemed very loose and gapey. And so I knit like a couple rounds, and then I was like, this isn't gonna work. And so maybe I only knit one round, maybe two. I think I knit 2 rounds, and then switched down to an even smaller needle size. And so I ended up using, I didn't write it down. Like I used like 4 different needle sizes for this pattern, which is weird. And I should have went and double checked to see what my gauge ended up being like in the stockinette section, because I think it's tighter than what the color work ended up being, but the fabric looks more cohesive because of the like density of the fabric. So anyways, I I went down a needle size, but I had this like 1 or 2 rounds that were just like really, like they looked tall and like gapey. And so instead of ripping back, I like went through and like pulled every single stitch and like tightened it up all the way around my sweater. I don't remember if I did 2 rounds or if it was just 1 round, but and then I had these really long ends of all the slack that I had pulled out, and then I just wove those in like regular ends. But I'm glad that I like went through and did that. I was like visiting with family and just like chit-chatting and like pulling all of these stitches, every single one around the body. Yeah, so I'm glad that I did that. And when I blocked it, I was really hoping that like you could still kind of see that difference between those fabrics. And I was hoping it would just like disappear when I blocked it, but it didn't quite. But I think it's fine. I also can notice that on the sample pictures and also other people's pictures. Like I think it's just like the nature of the beast a little bit when you have, there's like whatever 20 stitches or something in between those last final like contrast color blips, and then you're switching to just like 1 strand plain stockinette. I think it's just kind of inevitable. But anyways, I am overall very happy with how it turned out. Fits really nicely. It feels comfy. I'm not like, you know, yanking at it at all. It just like, it's very soft. It feels very like easy to wear, and I'm really happy with that. So I'm really hoping that the yarn holds up well. Oh, one thing that was, I don't know why I did this, but I cast on for a size 3, and then I was planning to increase to a size 4, and then I just never did. And so the size 3 was 42 1/4 inches. I have a 41-inch bust. Sometimes I find that if I cast on for my bust size that this is too big, and so I think that was my thought, but then I just like never increased again. And sometimes I modify that by like adding on more stitches at the underarm, but I just didn't do that either. I like split for sleeves while we were in Hawaii, and the color work doesn't line up exactly at the underarm, and so you're having to like pay attention to which stitch you were on in the pattern when you got to the beginning of round, like approaching the beginning of round, and then at the start of the next section they don't line up exactly. And trying to split for sleeves, I felt like complicated. It was like knit to, you know, stitch 12 of the repeat and then do such and such, and I wasn't about to mess with that, I guess. So but I think it fits well. Like it's fine. The colors for this are French words that I'm not gonna say, but they translate to twilight for the grayish bluish gray, and then driftwood for the contrast color. And so when I looked up what they were, I was like, oh yeah, that's totally what it seems like. It might be my favorite colorwork sweater that I've made. I feel like it fits me the best. So yay. Total price for this was $92.18. The balls of yarn are normally $13.75. I got them on sale, so they were $11. 6 cents per meter, or 7 if they are not on sale. So like to me that's like that fits within my like that's an affordable yarn kind of like parameters. And one other thing I changed is that there's supposed to be color work at the cuff, and I didn't include that because I need to be able to pull up my sleeves or I feel panicky, and so I didn't want that like potential extra tightness right there from the stranded color work, and so I just left that off. And so I used a little bit less of the contrast than what was called for in the pattern, but otherwise it was like, yeah, so I have an extra ball of this, like I have a full ball, but now I can do something with this as the main color and then this as the contrast color. Like, I don't know, what can I make with 50 grams of fingering weight yarn plus a contrast color? Can I get a hat out of that? Not sure. Anyways, yeah. Okay. My mannequin and I are going to trade places now. Okay, my next one here is called The Illusionist by Unwind Knitwear. Another very beautiful colorwork designer that I love. I have a half-finished project of one of her, like, my very favorite pattern of hers that I need to rip out because my gauge is, like, completely wrong. Like, super tight, like 36 stitches per 4 inches. And very dense, so I need to rip that out. But in the meantime, I was like, I'll just knit a different one of her sweaters. And so, yeah, this one's called the Illusionist. This has been a very long-term project for me. I started this August of 2022, and I finished it March of 2024. So, and I had bought the yarn for this in like spring of 2022. And so it had been planned for a long time. I had started it that summer and then stopped because I was like, it was kind of complicated, and also I was pregnant. I was like, it's not going to fit me anyways, like I'll just leave it. And then I picked it back up again last fall and was like, okay, I'm going to finish this. And then I realized I'm going to run out of yarn, and so it went back into a corner, and I just pulled it back out again these last couple of weeks and finished it. So it has been a very long-term project. Unfortunately, that means that I can't remember lots of things that I did on it at the start, and this one is not fitting me well, and so that's annoying. I'll get into that, but the yoke is not fitting me very well, especially compared to this one, because this one like feels like it's very comfy, and this one is not. It's like riding up and like trying to choke me. So, but anyways, one thing that I'm very proud of myself about this sweater was the colors that I picked. I really liked how they, like, I feel like I was able to replicate the effect of the designer's sample, but like in the colors that I chose. And I also picked these colors in person at a yarn show, like at a yarn festival here in Edmonton that spring, 2022. And I usually spend like a million hours trying to pick colors, like sitting at my computer, like, you know, taking screenshots and like pulling colors together and changing my mind 12 times. And so me like picking all of these colors out in person at an event, I was like surprised that it worked out. So if you ignore the part where I ran out of yarn, like it worked out really well. And I had like kind of gone through in the pattern. She has the balls of yarn that she used, which I wish that every single designer would do. It's like I want to see what the yarns looked like initially, and then I want to see what it turned into once you knit it into fabric. And oftentimes I go through and like find the yarn that they used, find the colorway, find a picture of it so that I can compare it. Because when I'm picking colors, it's like, okay, I want to pick something that's like kind of equal like value, I want to say. I don't know, I'm not very up on like color theory and things, but I want it to, like, I want to change the color scheme, but I want the colors to be how they relate to each other, to relate in the same way. And so I feel like I was able to do that with the colors that I chose. And part of that was because she had a picture of like, here's my 5 colors, and here's C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, and I was able to like pick like, okay, this one is like the most contrasting color, and then okay, this one is going to like blend into this one, and so yes. And also because I bought these at a local yarn festival, they are all Alberta dyers, which I also love, and so I used 3 different yarn dyers. I guess what you'd call the main color, that's like the cast on and the like cuffs and stuff, is Small Fish yarns, which I believe are from St. Albert, so that's close to Edmonton here. This color called Tweed. And then I used 3 colors from Ancient Arts, which is my very favorite yarn dyer, who is in Calgary. So one of them is called French Lavender Fields, and it's kind of like it's like this tweed, but like with bits of yellow and purple in it. And then Eiffel Tower, which I panic bought an extra skein of, or like a little mini skein of. It's much lighter, and blues and purples, and will it focus? Nobody knows. And then the darkest color, the contrast color, is Chili Pepper Popper from Ancient Arts. So that's her Sognado base. And then I used Smiling Sheep, which is a company from Leduc, and the color was called Blue Ridge Mountains. And I think that was my favorite out of all of them. It was like this kind of like taupey color, but with like blues and grays then in it. And yeah, I really like how it all like faded together. the French Lavender Fields color was too similar to whatever the background color was at that time, and so you can't, that was hard. Part of why it was complicated to knit is because it was a really long repeat, and I couldn't tell what color I had just knit with. So if I was getting off, if I I knit 3 instead of 2, I couldn't actually tell which yarn I had just knit with, and so I had to literally follow the path of the yarn to figure out which color I had used, because they were just so similar, and so it makes a really subtle effect on those ones, but then the darker chili pepper color then pops out, which then I like that. So anyways, yeah, I really like how it looks. I'm bummed about the fit. You may notice that I have 3/4 length sleeves, and that's because I ran out of yarn. And so when I picked this back up again, I had knit the color work on one of the sleeves when I put it down a year ago. And so I was like, okay, great, I'll just whip through the rest of the sleeve. I just you had to fade the yarns. Okay, great. Oh, you know what? I think I had the body on hold also. So I hadn't finished the body. So that's what I did first, is I finished the body, got it to the length that I wanted it to, and then knit a sleeve. And I got to about here on the sleeve, and I had this much of my tweed color left, and I was like, I don't think that's gonna be enough. And I had weighed them and was trying to divide them up, and also I was running out of the Blue Ridge Mountains colorway. And so I had polled people on Instagram, what do I do? And so I had some good ideas. Somebody had suggested that I fade dark, and so if I go from this light color and then fade and end up with the really dark color at the cuff. And I think that that's what I would have done, except that I needed more. I was still not going to have enough of this tweed color to blend it the way I wanted it to, and I didn't want it to seem color blocked. So anyways, that went away in a pile again. I was, at the end of last year, I was trying to finish a bunch of Languishing whips, and then that was the plan for this, and then I gave up. And because I had bought this yarn so long ago, it didn't exist anymore for me to just buy more from this indie dyer, except for the Zanete one, which is why I have a random mini skein of the one colorway. And I bought a couple other, I bought a handful of mini skeins just to see if they might be close enough. I thought, okay, well maybe this one is close enough to the tweed color, and then this is the one that I actually needed, and okay, well here's one that has a little bit of blue, maybe I can blend that one in, and it's no, it would have just changed it too much. So I had this one if I needed it, because this was the right colorway at least, but then I ended up not using it anyways, so now I have a little cute bouquet of mini skeins from Ancient Arts. So when I picked this back up again then, the last couple months, I ripped out my sleeve to the end of the color work, split up all of my yarn, and then basically just made up how I was feeding it, depending on how much yarn I had left. So because I really liked that Blue Ridge Mountains colorway, I wanted to make sure that I had enough of it on both sides to make it even, because initially I was going to just sub in that other one, but it was much lighter. Anyways, and yeah, I just I went back and forth between the sleeves as I went, and kept weighing my yarn, and didn't know how much I was going to need to do the cuffs. Is it called a cuff when it's at your elbow? Probably. I don't know what else you call that. Anyways, the ribbing, and I still ended up with I have a little nugget of the tweed left, and so I could have gone a little bit more. I thought, oh, maybe I'll add a couple more rounds to the body, but I'd literally probably get 2 more rounds of the body. Okay, it's not worth it. Or okay, maybe I'll rip out my bind off and go and do a sewn Italian bind off at the bottom. No, it's fine. It's done. It's whatever. So I actually like the length of the sleeve, because like I said before, it's I have to be able to pull my sleeves up, and I used to exclusively wear 3/4 length sleeve garments, and so this is just a throwback to my high school self. And yeah, so overall, I figured it out. pattern is very detailed. Each like section has its chart there that you need. One thing that I found tricky, which I found with the other one too, is that she organizes everything based on what row you're on. And so by the time you like get through here, you're like row 182. And it's like, okay, I don't know what row that is. Like, I wish that it would restart every time you got to a new section. So like when you split for sleeves, now you're at row 1 again. Or when you finish the color work, now we're at row 1 again, like that kind of thing. Because I couldn't keep track of where I was at, especially when I knit it over the course of almost 2 years, like, well, a year and a half. Yeah, it was hard to put down and put back and pick back up again. This was one that I definitely went and made my own color charts. Because my colors were like not clear enough about what color I was supposed to be using, there was no way I could then translate to be like, oh yeah, so the pink in her pattern is actually the lighter tweed color in my pattern, and then the dark purple in hers is actually the blue in mine, but I also have a purple, but it's not her purple. Like, there was no way. So I made all of my own charts. That's the only way that my brain could figure out what I was doing. So yeah, about the fit on the top, I would like to ask your opinions about what went wrong. Again, like I said, because I don't remember what happened at the start, often, like I did with this one, I was like, oh, I'm going to cast on with this size, and then I'm going to actually change it to this size as I go. Was that my plan here? Maybe. Did I cast on for a larger number of stitches and then forget? Did I... it feels like I didn't go down a needle size for my ribbing. One thing about this pattern is that it had short rows throughout the whole back, and so you'd finish a color work section and then add another round of short rows, which I like because then there isn't just this big gap across the back. There's a little one, but then it kind of divvies that up along the back, which I like in the color work just because it helps keep things looking consistent instead of, I don't like having that big like block of plain stockinette at the back of the neck. I'm wondering if maybe it's like a little bit too tight across the shoulders. Maybe I needed more increases as I got to my shoulder, if like it's too tight here and so it's pulling up and then this is coming up, or if I needed more short rows and so that's why it's kind of like coming up. If I needed more ease maybe across my bust and so then that also is causing it to like come up. And if I yank it just right, then it's like, okay, great, it's perfect. But as soon as I start moving around, then it like inches back up. And so when I first tried it on, well, actually when I was blocking it, I could tell as like I kind of had this like funnel neck thing going on. And so I tried to block it out. It didn't work. And I might try putting just a round of elastic through the inside of the neck, just if like that can like keep this where it's supposed to be. See if that makes a difference. I wish that it just like felt like this one. It was just like, it just feels easy to wear and like normal and not fussy, because I like how it turned out and it was a ton of work. So we'll see. This is not the first time this has happened to me with a colorwork yoke sweater. I know that there's just like in general can be like fit issues with them, depending on like how the pattern is written, depending on your body size, like your body shape, like my rate of increase from like my neck to my shoulder to my bust, like all of that. So anyways, if you have any ideas, I also feel like it's almost like I need to like pinch out this much fabric here. And so like, okay, was my gauge off? Like what's going on? I'm not sure. So if you have any ideas about like, do you like diagnose what the problem was? I don't think I can fix anything about it. That's why I'm going to try the elastic. But yeah, just to like make do. And it won't be a like grab and go every day kind of sweater for me. It'll be a like special sweater when I feel like it's okay if I feel a little bit fussy in my clothes, which normally drives me nuts. But I also really like how it looks. So anyways. Okay, so this one cost more money because it was all hand-dyed yarn, and also I barely used any of that like the darkest like chili pepper popper. So this is another case of like I literally had to buy this whole skein of 400 meters. Actually, it's not. It's the Socknado is less than that, but it doesn't matter. It's like 350 something meters. but I only used like a little bit of it. So now I have leftovers, but I just calculated the cost based on what I was assuming the cost was because I didn't write it down. So cost of this one was $132.78. It's 1,200-ish meters of yarn. And to me that is still like pretty reasonable for a hand-dyed sweater. The furnace just turned on and it's noisy, so now I'm trying to turn it off from my phone. If it will listen to me. I'm going to get my languishing whip from the same designer and show you because it's so beautiful, and one day I will finish it. Okay, I'm not sure if it's going to turn off or not, and I have to leave here soon to go get my kitten, but anyways, this is the other sweater. It's called Nightbook by Unwind Knitwear, and I'm knitting it in the yarn from the pattern, which is from Grenouille, which are from my furnace stopped. Anyway, it's just like the most beautiful color work that I've ever seen in my life, and I need to rip the whole thing out and reknit it. So this was one of my very first color work projects. It has been languishing for a long time now. One of my very first color work sweaters, and yeah, one day it will get done. Okay, I'm gonna switch sweaters again, and then I'm gonna show my next finished object. Oh, something that I don't know what happened, but the beginning around on this one is not tidy at all. Can you see that? I don't know what happened. It wasn't great. So can you see that on my mannequin there? How it's like kind of flaring? I don't know. Maybe I could pick up like under here and rip out the neckband, but anyways, okay. So this was my mega project this past couple of months. This is the blanket for Lainey by the Bluebird box. It is a blanket. And I've been using it like a blanket, but I've also been folding it in half. And then either wrapping it around myself like this when I'm at home, and I just like feel cozy and like a granny, and I just really like it. Or the week I finished it, it was very cold here, and so I was just like bundling it around me like this. And it was so cozy and warm. So it's like the best shawl ever because it's double thickness. It's wool and the outside's alpaca. The rest of it's 100% wool. Like, you know how sometimes wool just like feels like it's giving off heat? That's what this feels like. And it is so lovely. I'm so happy with it. It was a labor of love though. It was a big project. This is a test knit for the Bluebird box, and the pattern comes out March 28th. So who knows when this podcast is going to go up, but just so you know, that's when the pattern goes live. So it starts here in the middle with this little square, and then there's a color work section as you build out, and then, you know, it's like, oh, here, let's do 1 bazillion bubbles, and then here, have a break with some plain stockinette, and mostly a break with some lace stockinette, and then here, have a feather and fan section that gets to like 800 and some stitches around the last row. So that felt like a slog. I'm not a proficient lace knitter, and I was just like, it's fine. I only did half. It'll be fine, but I got it done. So this is knit in Barocco Lannis Light, in 4 of their colors, and then this darkest blue color is Rosebud River Fiber Mill alpaca, and so that's a fiber mill here in Alberta. It's in southern Alberta, and it is very lovely and drapey and soft. The skein is just like, it was so like beautiful and floppy. And I had never used the Barocco Lannis Light before. I had bought a sweater's quantity in this gray color to knit a pressed flowers cardigan, which I mentioned last time that I like abandoned quite quickly, and then I stole a ball of that to make this sweater, or I mean to make this shawl blanket, not sweater. It's not a sweater. It is a shawl and a blanket, but and initially I had started in completely different colors and then got through the color work and then decided I didn't like it. And that was while I was on vacation, and so I had brought the yarn that I was going to use for the project and then changed my mind. And so while I was there, then I ordered a whole bunch more of this Barocco yarn. The Barocco website had very nice, very clear pictures of all the different colorways. And so that was handy for me to like be able to color match things or whatever, like decide pair different colors together. And then Stash Lounge in Calgary had this yarn. And they had the colors I wanted in stock, so it was perfect. I ordered it while we were away. It arrived maybe still while we were away. When I got home, then I cast on the new one, and off we went. So my gauge was also off first go around, despite my large swatch that I had knit. And so I took a picture of like what it was looking like before, and then what the new one looked like. And so I'll find that picture and then put it in here. But anyways, I was pretty, like I said, I was pretty done with the lace by the time I got to that, or like by the time I was like halfway through that. But otherwise, this was very enjoyable to knit. Like I liked all of the different sections of it, and so that like kept it very engaging. I love color work, so it was like really nice to do that color work at the start, and then to like, okay, now I've got just like these simple rounds where I have to pay attention a little bit where I'm increasing, but otherwise you can just zoom. Okay, great, now we have another interest row with like some eyelets and some baubles. The baubles also took a long time, but like they were kind of fun once I got it figured out. And then you got a break again, and it's like there was a lot of like dopamine. It was like good dopamine knitting, because there was just a lot of interest to what was going on. Also, I had it smushed up onto my like circular needles, right? And so it wasn't until I once I finished the color work section, I put it onto 2 long circulars and blocked it, just like steam blocked it, which was nice to like see it all like laid out and it's kind of squarish. And then, but otherwise I didn't see the whole thing until I bound it off. And so it was all smushed up. I had 800 some stitches like smushed up onto my circular needle. And then as I was binding off, and then you like see the like blanket emerge. And so then like getting to like kind of unravel this whole thing, not unravel, that makes it sound like I took it apart, unfurl the whole thing and see just like, oh yeah, that was a ton of knitting. And for it to just all of a sudden be this like beautiful square and be cozy and soft and lovely. I used like a ton of pins to pin out all of these little like picots kind of thing around the edge. I definitely messed up my lace section near the start. Like I made a mistake, and so then they were like, my little eyelets were off kilter a little bit, but it's okay. I did catch it a couple times later, but I'd missed it at like one of my first sections, and then later I like caught it and I like went back, like unknit all the way around to like fix it. And so when I realized, oh, I'd also made a mistake way back there, I was like, it's just gonna be there. It's just gonna stay included. I was still a little bit uncertain about my colors with this like gold and how it interacts with this kind of, I don't know what you would call it. The color is called aquamarine, so I guess that's could be what it is. Aquamarine, goldenrod, phlox, and fog is the gray, and then the alpaca is just called navy, I think. And so the gold still like stands out more to me than what I am accustomed to, but also I like how they all play together. There's something about it that like feels a little bit like retro vibes to me, which I also like as I'm like being a granny, like with my scarf wrapped or with my shawl wrapped around me. So, and then with the gold picked up again here. I like how the gold, like having the gold baubles, just like to pull that color in again, I really like. So I think if I could go back in time, I would want these to be switched, to have this, the first, like the two stripes to be in the light purple, and then just to have the one gold in the middle, but it's fine. So this project is casted on January 20th, and then casted on again on like February 6th or something, finished it March 5th, and so that was surprising to me that I got it all done so quickly. And yeah, like I said, it's coming out March 28th. This one cost $86 worth of yarn, and I really like it. So I feel a little bit concerned about Birdie touching it when it's, like, if I'm using it as a blanket and I'm like curled up on the couch and it's like it's sport weight / fingering weight, just a little, and it's like a little bit more precious to me than like my very, very old like acrylic crochet blanket that I made 15 years ago. I'm worried that she's going to snag it. But otherwise, I've been very happily using this around my house. The weather is starting to get warmer here, but I can still be nice and cozy in my house and in my cold basement. So, okay, that is all of my finished objects for today. I now have to go and pick up my kid from school. So if things look different in 10 seconds from now, it's because like an hour has gone by, and I will come back and show you all my whips. Okay, I'm back. Can you tell that anything is different? I tried to look exactly the same. My hair is like extra voluminous today, and I don't necessarily like that. I also need to trim my bangs. They're getting in my face. So I'll just go like this the whole time. It's not annoying at all, right? Okay, so I showed off my two finished sweaters and my blanket / shawl, and now I have some whips to show. So this one is one that I actually mentioned in my last episode and then completely forgot to show for some reason, but I've made a lot more progress on it now, so I have more to show. This is the Faye Cowl by Barnaby. And I'm knitting this with Vinker fiber, the fingering base, in the colors Charcoal and Folklore. So this is the Taylor Swift inspired color from Folklore album, which I obviously had to buy. Yes, I was knitting on this the other day when the Eras Tour concert premiered on Disney+. Yeah, I had bought that yarn with the intention of making the newsprint cowl from Pearl Soho. That's what I talked about in my last episode, that I like cast on the 1 bazillion stitches and knit a few rounds, and I was like, I don't like this. It's just kidding. I don't want to knit this. And so this was my alternative pattern that I found. And I had a real fun time also having to cast this one on 3 times because apparently I could not count to 85 or whatever the number was. I cast on the wrong number of stitches, had started knitting it, and I was like, I'll fudge it, it's fine. And then fixed it, cast it on again. No, didn't fix it. Cast it on again. This time with my stitches were twisted. Cast it on again. And I'm pretty sure that I cast on fewer stitches this time, which now I'm like, why did I do that? The stitch repeat is like 28 stitches, I think. 34 stitches, so I wrote it down. 34 stitches, and I think I cut out 34 stitches. So that, like an entire repeat. Anyways, I'm pretty sure it fits over my head. It's a cowl, colorwork cowl. It's double-sided, and so once I'm about just over half, I think, maybe like 2/3 finished this first kind of section, and then the colorwork motif switches, and then that part you like fold inside, and then you graft it together at the bottom. There's a note in the pattern that this cowl was inspired by a pattern from Shetland Wool Week from 2020 by Ella Gordon. And so in that pattern, it's a beautiful cowl, like very cool colors. The outside and the inside are knit at different gauges, and so then the inside becomes a little bit smaller, so when you tuck it in, it's just like extra cozy, all that. When I was like, wait a second, is this going to fit over my head? Like, I need to decide if I'm actually going to do that part of it or not, if I'm going to knit the inside at a smaller needle, if I will just leave it. So anyways, it's enjoyable. It's a good, I just really like color work. Oh, I should show my stitch marker. Because I cast this on when I was in Hawaii, I put on a little flip-flop stitch marker from Firefly Notes. I got their advent calendar, not this past year, but the year before, and I like picking off the those cute little stitch markers. So yeah, it's just nice. I like doing color work. It's nice to have color work on the needles. I have to pay like a little bit more attention because it's 34 stitches repeat, and so 34 stitches wide, and so I have to, yeah, just pay a bit of attention. The inside pattern is more like, it's a smaller repeat, so I think that'll just go quicker in my brain. But anyways, it's just, yeah, nice project to have on the go. And I like the yarn. I wanted there to be a few more speckles, I think, in the light color, but it's fine. Like, sometimes it almost looks like, oh, like I washed it and the charcoal color bled into the like gray color, but I know that's not what happened. I know that it's folklore. So I will be just perfectly happy with it. But anyways, so that's been a nice project to kind of pick away at in between other things. I have some yarn on the way for a test knit, and in the meantime, I was like, I better cast on another sweater because why not? And so some more yarn that I had bought on Boxing Day sales, because I bought a lot of yarn on Boxing Day sales to cope with life, was some Drops Air to make a turtle dove cardigan. And so I cast that on the other day, and it's just a zoom in along. So yeah, here it is. I can almost stretch it out to its proper shape on this very long needle that I have, but not quite. So anyways, I've got like, it's like a little, there I have a little cape. I am modifying the raglan increase rate a little bit because I didn't want it to be quite so deep, which I know is like the whole like vibe of the turtle dove like sweaters and stuff, but I just know practically for me, like, I need it to be, I don't want it to be quite so like bat wingy. So I'm just like totally fudging it. Like, I'm just making it up as I go, which, like, that's probably not a good idea, but it's fine. I just like keep checking my numbers, and I think it'll be fine. I'm almost at the point where I can split for sleeves. So this has gone quite fast. I've never knit with Drops Air before. It's very fluffy and light. Feels very soft. I am curious how this will hold up because it is very soft. And doesn't feel like it has a lot of structure to it. I have like quite a few cardigans planned for this year. I have my like big color work cardigan that I've worn on the podcast before, and that might be the only cardigan that I have. I do have one down here that I don't wear anywhere except for in my cold knitting room. And I have my Rowan cardigan on the go, which I finished the front panel of that, so I have one more front panel to go. And yeah, it's come along. I was happy to get the first front panel done. Anyways, I have a lot of cardigans planned because I have a lot of like store-bought cardigans that I wear all the time, just to like throw over anything that I'm wearing around the house. I'm wearing one all the time. So why don't I knit more of them? My big color work one feels more like formal, I think. And also because it's color work all the way down to the sleeves, I can't roll the sleeves up, and so I have to fold them up, and then the cuffs get a little bit stretched out, and so then I'm scared to do that. And so it's not just like an everyday cardigan for me to wear. Maybe this won't feel like it either because of the wool, like how the fabric will feel, just like very soft and like delicate kind of, but because I'm knitting it in drops instead of in the Sonder yarn that the pattern calls for, it's like obviously more affordable. It can feel a little bit more like an everyday garment for me. So yeah, that's coming along. It's just been a speedy knit. I just started the second ball, and then I don't know when my yarn is supposed to arrive for that other project, and so we'll see how far I get on that, and then probably it will get put aside because then I'll be working on the other one. Okay, my other whips are just like random things that I've been like very slowly working away on, like a pair of DRK Everyday Socks that I was going to knit for my husband for Christmas. That obviously did not get done. And I guess I could show the front panel of my Roan cardigan, but I'll save that for another time. But the other thing I wanted to show off was this skein of yarn that I dyed myself. Isn't it so pretty? So I went to a yarn dyeing party the other night. There's a group here in Edmonton called the Yarn Rebels that do lots of like fun events and stuff. And so I have gone to a couple of their other events, and like they had like a Christmas party like that I went to, and like a sweater weather party that I went to, but they also just like have a weekly get together that I haven't been able to join for before. So I went this week, and we were dyeing yarn, and it was at a brewery, and so had some interesting gear, and we had pizza and dyed yarn, and yeah, it was cool. Smiling Sheep, which is in this sweater, the Blue Ridge Mountain one color that I really liked, they were the ones who were doing the dyeing with us, and so they had a cool setup like in the back of the brewery, basically, like a few of us at a time. We did it where it's like out on, it's like the skein of yarn is like out on like saran wrap, and you could like, they had some color palettes kind of like pre-selected if we wanted to use those, so they just like pulled which dyes we would need. They had like the dyes made up in bottles and stuff already, and we could just choose whatever we wanted, dye it however we wanted it to, and then they like wrap it up, and then steam it, and then to set the yarn, like to set the dye, and then rinsed it, spun it dry. We like took home a slightly wet skein of yarn at the end of the night, and yeah, I'm really happy with my turned out. It's like, it feels like what I wanted it to look like, and so that's awesome. Just like lots of purples and blues, and yeah. So I think that I'm gonna make a musselburgh hat, just because I feel like that's such a good way to use an entire skein of like a special yarn. I made one last year that I like didn't really like, but then turns out I do really like it, and I wore it all winter long. Like I wore it this morning on school drop off because I had wet hair, and I was like, I'm gonna put my musselburgh hat on. Like I've worn it a lot. I was worried that the size wasn't very good, but actually turns out that as my hair has gotten longer, I need a bigger toque because it was kind of wide and short, and so I just like don't fold up the brim, and then it doesn't feel too wide anymore because my hair's gotten longer and it's quite thick and it takes up space underneath my toque. So anyways, this might turn into a musselburgh hat. I also was thinking that I might want to make some socks. So we'll see. I don't love knitting socks. I like to wear my hand knitted socks, but they're not my favorite thing to actually make. I was watching, I guess it was on like Laura Penrose's Insta stories, maybe she was sharing this. Oh man, I can't remember now. It might have been one of her Patreon videos. Anyways, she cast on a pair of socks so she could work on it at the theater, but then like, whoops, I knit like almost the whole sock like during the day, and so she knit an entire pair of socks in 2 days, I think. To me, it takes me 6 months to knit a pair of socks. Like, it doesn't take me that much knitting time, but it takes that long for my brain to let me knit socks. So I think these would be like my perfect pair of socks because I love the color so much. They're just not my favorite things to knit, which seems weird because like a musselburgh hat is like also just round and round and round in stockinette. It's because every time I get to the heel, I just like lose all motivation to continue knitting. And I've done afterthought heels, but I don't like how they fit on me. And so doing like a heel flap and gusset, I haven't done it enough to know what I'm doing. And so I have to like pay attention every single round of what's going on. And I don't like that. I was going to say about the Turtle Dove cardigan. If you've watched any of my other episodes where I have mentioned a raglan sweater, you will know that I don't find raglans intuitive to knit. I found this much easier on the cardigan because it's flat. And so I think part of what was hard time for me when I'm knitting raglan in the round is that I lose track of what round I'm on. And so if I'm on an increased round or a plain round, or like if there's the increase rate between the arm and the front and back is different, and try to keep track of that. And that is also the case on the Turtle Dove, but because I know that every wrong side row I'm just knitting, I'm not doing anything else. Like every other row, I'm just purling. I don't have to keep track of where I'm at in my increases. So when I'm knitting a sock and I have to keep track of which round I am on to do a gusset increase, or that if I'm increase before this stitch marker and then again after this stitch marker, then I miss one of them, my stitch counts are forever off. And if I put it, like I have to sit and knit the entire heel in one sitting, because otherwise I lose track of what I'm doing and don't know enough about the construction of the heel to pick it up again and figure out where I'm at. So that has happened with those everyday socks. I got to the heel and then I put it down, and then now it's been 4 months. So anyways, I feel like I have to always have a sock on the go because that's what everybody says they do. Have it in the car or whatever, but oh, there she goes. She's getting to her favorite spot above my shelf. So I often do have a sock on the go. It does not bring me joy the way other things do. So we'll see. I think that the yarn of this would help me feel excited about knitting the sock. But we'll see. I also won a little door prize at the event, and so I got us a few little mini skeins from a dyer called Yarn Voodoo, who are from Calgary. And so it's not going to show very well through the plastic, but some nice kind of like saturated colors. And as soon as I saw it, I thought of like the doodle cowl patterns. So that might be what these are destined for. We'll see. They're not the right weight, but I'm like, I might be able to figure it out. So anyways, I was excited to win a door prize and come home with some beautiful yarn and chit chat with people and have some beer from a brewery that I have not been to before. So yeah, if you're anywhere around the Edmonton area, then you should look up the Yarn Rebels on Instagram. And then also if you're going to go to an event, you should tell me and then we can go together. She's funny to me. I think that was everything that I wanted to talk about today. I went through yesterday all of my like projects on the go and like wrote down what needle size I was using, which felt helpful for me. And then also just kind of being like get a handle on like what I have on the go right now. So like I said, there are a couple other like random ones that I just like haven't really put any work into. My best friend asked for a toque, and then I made her one that didn't fit, and so I have plans for another one for her. But now it's like spring, so she might be getting a toque when the weather is warm, but that's okay. If you are interested in all at seeing cute chickens, cute quail, some pigs, canning, any of that, my best friend posts about her life on her Instagram called Beaver County Hen House, and you should go and check her out because I love her. She's one of my very favorite people in the world, and I am very much a city girl, and she lives on an acreage and has a bunch of animals, and yeah, kind of like doing the homesteady life. So you should go check her out if you want to. I will link her below. Shout out to Cassie for being my best friend for the last 8 years. Something that I've been kind of like analyzing this past month is why I'm doing this podcast, I guess. And part of that being is that I really enjoy it. like that is why I'm doing it. Like I am really enjoying it. But also I feel this pressure that I should be posting more. I should be able to, like, especially since I'm enjoying it, like I should be able to like film more often, put out more content, like churn out all the videos, and I just like, I cannot. And maybe it doesn't, I think that's like a self-imposed pressure that I'm putting on myself. Literally nobody has sent me a message being like, you need to post more, except I did get somebody, some rando like comment on my Instagram saying he wanted to help me with my SEO. Yeah, so I was like, no, leave me alone. So this like random stranger with hardly any followers on their account, and he didn't seem like he knew a lot about the knitting world. So anyways, I promptly deleted that message. It's not like people who actually follow me are like, Kirsten, why aren't you posting more often? You should be doing that, and you're not, and now I'm disappointed in you. But that's what my brain's telling me sometimes. And I think because I do, like, I enjoy this process. I enjoy the kind of putting all my projects together and like figuring out what I want to say. And I find that editing, like, it's an interesting kind of like creative activity for me, which I enjoy. It's like my kind of creativity that's like, it's creative and also structured. So I like doing that. And anyways, I feel this pressure that I should be able to post more often than I do. Yeah, I think just like, that's just what you hear about, like, oh, you gotta post all the time, you gotta post every day on Instagram, you gotta be consistent, and that's just not reality for me right now in life. So I do always appreciate every single time I post something that there are people out there who watch it whenever I happen to sporadically post a video. So thank you so much for being here. Like this video, subscribe if you haven't. I love reading people's comments. So yeah, I was trying to reply to them. Birdie is wandering around my room again. It's time for me to say goodbye. Okay, goodbye from me and from Birdie. Okay, happy knitting.